So, for those of you who don't know, this is William, and I am Bradley. For if you are from William's followers and not mine, but I think to start off, I obviously know William. Some of you guys don't, so I'll start off with just William introducing himself, saying a bit about himself and his work.
Hi, I'm Will. I'm a photographer. I take pictures. I'd hope that you know that. And yeah, I got my honors degree in photography from the University of the Arts last year. So I'm qualified in that sense to talk about photos and read and write about them and all that. And I'm excited to be here with Mr. Bradley, having him ask me questions.
Sweet. So yeah, that's a bit about William. So I'm going to start off just with asking, or the standard question I think maybe everybody's asking each other during this time, but what have you been doing to keep creative or keep busy during lockdown? I know you've done a few self-portraits, such as, let me just get them up. I found a new feature on Instagram, such as these two. I hope everybody can see those. Those are just one of the many that he's been doing. But do you want to tell us a bit more about what you've been doing?
I've just been organizing stuff, really, getting ready for when we're allowed to go outside again. Going through my archive, labeling things better than they were labeled, rescanning old stuff, messing around with colors and scans, because it's quite important to me to be able to get the colors right, you know, that sort of thing. And then taking pictures of what's going on around me, so things on the street outside, different aspects of the building I live in the garage, and the self-portraits, which are just
Yeah.
for fun.
Yeah, you did send me a few photos. I remember now that I can quickly show of the stuff he was talking about. So that's one of the pictures that he's been taking inside. I can't seem to find the other on my gallery. I've never used that share feature on Instagram before, but yeah. And then I just wanted to ask about your different projects. So obviously you have various projects you've been working on in your career of photography, if you want to put it in inverted commas. But the first one, or the most recent one to my knowledge, that I want to bring up is the one where you had a look at the Burkarp, and it's nice that picked up the story and did a article on it. Do you want to speak a bit more about that, where the inspiration came from and what it's actually about? Because I've obviously read the article, but many people probably haven't.
So I live in a neighborhood in Cape Town called the Burkarp, which is, I don't know, fairly politically active, and there's all sorts of interesting things going on around here. And I spend a lot of time walking around and observing things around me. And at some point, I just decided that it'd be interesting to do a photo series of the people that I was hanging out with and getting to know. So I spent some time, well, a few months walking around, getting to know people, taking their pictures, hearing their stories, you know. The main idea behind it was just I was interested in the fact that it's a very tourist heavy area, and the way that the people interact with the tourists was kind of interesting, you know. Like to me, it was just strange that you live in your house over here, and then a tourist can come by and decide to like walk up on your stoop and take a selfie with your wall, you know, that whole sort of colonialist vibe, and the way that people benefit off of it, but also don't necessarily enjoy it. You know?
Okay. And so what did you see about the relationship? Would you say, when you documented it, the relationship was positive or negative, like with the tourist and locals?
I don't know. I think it's a symbiotic relationship, obviously, because as is the case with a lot of Cape Town, they rely on the tourist industry to make a living and survive and all that. I felt it was a bit, I don't know, a bit too much sometimes, the way the tourists took advantage of the fact that they were in an area that is pretty and took it to be just that, as opposed to, you know, someone's place of residence. If
Yes,
that makes
yes.
sense.
Yeah, I get what you mean. And then jumping back to when you were talking about you've just been scanning all your own stuff, or going through archives and looking through old work and everything. How did you find your look that you wanted to go with, or what you wanted to shoot? If that makes sense, you know, like every photographer has their look? How did you decide on what you have, or did it just come naturally as to your colors in your scans, what you photograph, and all? Hello, Ken. I see Ken said hello.
Hello, Ken. Also, anyone that's in this thing right now, please feel free to contribute or ask questions. It's not me and Bradley
Yes, sorry, I
speaking
forgot
just
to
to each
mention that.
other. You're more than welcome to say or ask anything. But with regards to the look my photos have and the way I scan things and all that, I wouldn't say I set out with a specific idea in terms of the way I wanted things to look. I spent a lot of time messing around and playing with the way things look to develop an understanding of what it is I see, you know, because obviously the pictures you take as a photographer, and I'm sure a fair few people here are people that, you know, take pictures or just, I don't know, have an interest in looking at them. The pictures you end up taking are, of course, an attempt at reflecting the way you see the world, you know, so the look that you come up with or stumble upon for your photographs is generally going to be informed by the way that you perceive things around you, you know, if that makes
Yes.
sense. And I'm
Yes.
still not happy with the look that my photos have. Like, I'm still always trying to improve the way things look on a phone or in print, because it's very hard to get the look out of your head and onto, I don't know, any form of media.
Yes. Yeah, I understand that. Like yesterday, Will and I was touching base, and we were chatting about that. How there's different photographers that have their looks, and like the difference between being original and maybe being inspired. But like it's almost symbiotic. That if you're too original, then you just get nowhere, because you just spend your life trying to be too original. But then there's also the other side when you try to be like other people. I'm not sure if you want to speak more about that. I saw Maddie.
Mandy, I don't know. People just come at me and they want me to photograph them like that, and I'm happy to oblige, you know? Yes,
Yes.
contribute to that question. What were you saying about originality versus?
So I was saying, or I always wanted to re-bring up the conversation we had yesterday about how you were saying, about how you were saying there's a balance, and what would you say is the balance, or what is your thoughts on either being original or like saying having why are you laughing so?
Our chat is
I see
being
all
quite
those now.
generous.
Anyway.
I don't know. I think yesterday we were talking about the manner in which one chooses to make photographs and how you try to go about doing it. And if the reason you make work is because you want the work to be original, and you're constantly trying to make people look at your work and think, oh wow, how original, you're actually going to end up confusing both yourself and people that are interested in looking at your work, because all they ever see is like different things here and there. Whereas I think the other thing you were talking about just now was not being original and trying to emulate a style. And the same can be said for that, because if you spend all your time trying to do something someone else is doing, then when they organically move on from what it is they're doing to the next thing, because their process is based on what they're interested in as opposed to
Yes.
what someone else, emulating what someone else is interested in. When they move on from it, if you just end up doing the same thing, then you're never going to develop an understanding of why it is you make photographs and the photographs that you make and the impact that they have, you know?
Yes, I get you. Yeah, I almost knew the answer to that, but I almost just wanted to re-bring it up because I didn't want to miss that, because I thought it was quite interesting when we were talking yesterday, that whole conversation. But I want to jump to, or it's going to be straight in there, but where did your like interest, because I've noticed in those of you who've been following William for a while, you'll see that he has a fascination with bougainvilleas, or he takes a few photos of them quite often, trying to find the best one.
My
Where did that,
fascination with bougainvillea.
or where did it come from, and how did it start? Because, or I don't even know the answer. That's what I'm actually asking.
I don't think it's a specific fascination. I think a lot of people like photographing bougainvilleas. Like, you see all sorts of bougainvillea photos. For me personally, it's just anything I try and photograph. I want to do it in a way that someone who knows about photographs will look at it and think, oh wow, this person knew how to take that photograph. With regards to bougainvillea specifically, I think just all the houses I lived in when I grew up, like here in South Africa or in East Africa, there were always bougainvilleas around, and I don't know, I found them pretty. That one specifically, because it's from a project that's where I went and retraced my great uncle's footsteps during the Anglo-Boer War. That one, I don't know, it made me think of like a brain exploding, you know? It's like a war vibe. The whole project is kind of a bit morbid with regards to the fact that my uncle was executed by the British. And that one, I don't know.
Yeah,
it's got a bit of not nice look
yeah.
to it, you know, in my mind.
That's actually a good point to flow off. As my next thing was going to ask about your project that you were working on, looking into your ancestor of your uncle, or I think, or great uncle, whatever ancestor, whatever, in Grafrenet. Not sure if you want to speak a bit about that. Those are one of the pictures from the project. For those of you who don't know.
That was my final major project at university, so it was meant to be all kinds of deep and everything. I don't know. In university, I generally didn't do what they wanted me to do, and then in the final year, they made a huge big deal out of like you have to make good work because there's going to be all these huge industry people coming to the exhibition, and you need to impress them, and you might get a job out of it, and yada yada. And that didn't end up being a thing. They forgot to invite half the people they said they'd invite, but I ended up making this project, which was I don't know, about identity and sort of where I came from and the past that I have, because I don't know, I spend a lot of time thinking about that because I've spent a lot of my life living outside of South Africa, and with this project I just wanted to go back and trace a definite point in my lineage, which was my great uncle, who was a commander in the Anglo-Boer War, and the path he took before being captured and executed by the British.
Yes.
Which is what those photos are.
Sweet. Yeah, and then on that, when you were speaking about your project, or not your project, your final project for university, where you had the exhibition and all of that. This is actually my first time, like when I was going through the backlog of your work digitally, seeing these images digitally, and my oh my, do they look a lot different, like digitally than printed on the enlarger. I was actually like, I thought this image was different.
So you're talking about the prints themselves, or?
Yes. And I'm not sure if you want to give your thoughts on enlarger printing, or color darker prints and stuff like that compared to normal ones and stuff. Because I, for one, like saw it and I was like, what's the point of digital even? Let's go fully print. I'm joking.
Well, to me and a fair few other people, I reckon, because it's gaining popularity now and sort of a high-end fashion vibe and all that. Color darkroom printing and hand printing stuff in the darkroom is sort of the pinnacle of quality, because really all it is like when you take the picture on film in a film camera, the light goes onto the negative and it's stored on the negative, and then if you print it in the color darkroom, it's just light getting shot through the negative again onto paper, and you know it's about as pure as I reckon it could possibly be without just looking at the negative itself, which you could do with slide film. And if you know what you're doing, there's some like really obscure like little things you can do in a color darkroom that'll make a print really pop and sort of change the way the highlights, the halation to the highlights, or the way that they glow without being blown out, like my face is right now for some reason. Yeah, I don't know. Color darkroom is where it's at. If you have the opportunity to go print in a color darkroom, I would recommend it, and just playing with color in general.
Sweet. Yeah, so that's on. Like a lot of these questions, I already obviously know the answer to it. That's why I'm just telling everybody that my responses might seem very like, okay, cool, because I've heard it all before. I'm almost just trying to bring it up. I need to act surprised. But
wow.
But the next question or next topic I want to chat about is how did you shooting Tooth Taker happen, who is a tattoo artist, for those of you who don't know, but yeah, some of the pictures. Whilst William speaks, I'll go through them.
It's not a very deep story. I've followed him since like 2014 or something, like ages ago, because I really like tattoos. And at the time I was like, oh, I'm going to be a tattoo artist, because I was still in high school. And then I saw, just before I left London, he was like, I'm coming to London. If you want to get a tattoo or link up, let me know. So I emailed him and I sent him like some portfolio work and made it clear that I didn't know what I was doing, because I was fairly certain he got a fair few offers from people that might not know what they're doing about taking his picture. And I was like, listen, I'll take some pictures of you in exchange for a tattoo, because I wanted a tattoo for a long time. He was like, okay, cool. And I got a tattoo. I wasn't sure it was going to happen for the entirety of our time together, because we didn't really speak about it. He just invited me over to the tattoo studio, and I thought I was there to take pictures, and he said, okay, sit down. I was like, oh, am I getting a tattoo? And I got a tattoo, and it's I can't really roll my sleeves up right now because they're buttoned down, but it's a very nice tattoo.
It is. I can vouch for that, everybody, because I've seen it. It is quite very nice. And I mean, while you were there, it is.
Nice tattoo, toothtaker, hell of a guy, very interesting human being.
And
Probably
then
the best
while you were
man
in
in London.
England, you did some like magazine work for Wonderland. The Wonderland magazine? Am I correct, or am I mistaken?
Yeah, I had I did some stuff for Wonderland, and I had some things in Dazed and all of that. Not in print though, on Dazed Digital, and it had nothing to do with my photos. It was just because I took pictures of someone that was interesting and they got in Dazed. But you know, gotta let you know, Dazed, fancy.
Sometimes it takes taking photos of the right person to get into the print instead of just being good at it, which is sad, but at least your work got in there.
Yeah, I was very happy with it. The Wonderland thing, they just reached out to me. I thought it was a fake email when they emailed me because I wouldn't really imagine Wonderland being interested in me taking things for them, but they emailed me and I was like, okay, let's see if this is legit. And then in this very magazine here, because Maya wants to see it, even though she's seen it a million times, I did a bikini thing, which was fun, very fun. It's somewhere. Yeah.
There it is.
Bikini, Wonderland magazine.
William's work in the print itself. And
yeah. Never before
and that's
seen.
one of the thickest magazines I've seen in a while. I see someone's asking who was the person in Dazed.
Big Pig. She's a singer. She's doing quite well at the moment. Her and she's in a crew or whatever called 9/8 that Lava LaRue started in London. They're doing very well for themselves, I believe. Yeah, check her out. Big Pig, cool person, very nice human being, actually, very nice.
You've done quite a few things with Big Pig before, like also with Jay Green. I think you did behind the scenes stuff as well.
Yeah, I saw Jay. The way I got started doing stuff with Jay was he made a video for someone that I knew through a friend, a rapper friend, and I messaged him on Instagram. And I was like, "Whoa, this stuff is crazy nice, man!" And he was like, "Thank you." And I was like, "Yeah, check out my work." And he was like, "Well, I like your work. Let's do something together sometime." And then I saw he was doing something somewhere at some point, and I was like, "Hi, remember me?" And he was like, "Yes, I do. You can come do some behind the scenes stuff." And it went from there. I met Big Pig on set for a 24K music video, and I took the stills for that music video. And then at some point thereafter, she was like, "I need pack shots for my agency or for an article or something. I don't know." And they ended up getting used in Dazed, and there's another music magazine, I can't remember what, but in another music magazine as well.
That's right, yeah. So sometimes like the job doesn't come directly, like we're making this for a magazine, it's just you making it for somebody and then it ends up getting picked up afterwards. Yeah, so that's
just happened.
Yeah. Nice things. And then or before I open it to you more, like if there's anything specifically you want to talk about, and also just another shout out to anybody who wants to talk or not talk, wants to add questions or contribute, you can. Don't feel like it's just me and Will. We want it to be like a big conversation rather than this like me and Will apart from everybody else. I see Kent has a question. Why did you leave London, Will?
I never really liked being in London when I was there. It was a very, I don't know, sad place for me. The whole vibe of it, having grown up in places that were super tropical and there's trees everywhere and all that sort of stuff, just being there wasn't very fun. And also my girlfriend's here, so I had to come back to mine. Looking back on it though, I suppose there were good elements to living there. There's a lot more interest in the sort of work that I like making, and work in general. I don't know. Sometimes it feels a bit stagnant here in Cape Town, but I guess that's why I left London to come here. Start a brave new life in Cape Town.
And how has that worked for you? Like coming back here, like the contrast between London and South Africa. in terms of what work you make and what jobs you've been doing and all?
Well, in terms of the work I make, I mean, I'm more interested in making work in South Africa than I am in most other places. Like, I travel to places at some point once I've sort of solidified my idea of how I want to interpret the world around me. But since I got back here, which is like June last year, I've mainly just been focused on developing my photographic process and the way that I handle negatives and that sort of thing, you know, like just sort of developing a deeper understanding of what it is I see in the world around me and how I present it to people, you know?
Yes.
Which has been fun.
That's good. Then I just wanted to ask about your, I think it was in the first Cortex Creative Zine, the Beachgoers project. I'm not sure if that is something you'd like to talk about, or like how they came about, what it was. To be honest, I'm not even sure what it was. I just saw it and I quite liked the images. I'll bring some of it up if you're keen on chatting about that.
Yeah, that was the Beachgoers thing I made because I grew up in East Africa. I lived there for 8 years, and when I went and made those pictures, it was the last time I was going to be there, and I knew it was the last time because my parents are moving from East Africa to Mauritius, where they stay now, and I wanted to do something, again, sort of introspective thing, where I looked into, I don't know, stuff that I'd been surrounded by that I might have taken for granted. And the Beachgoers sort of came about because I spent everywhere I lived there, except for the last house we lived in, it was on the beach. So I spent like the vast majority of my childhood like running around on these beaches. Like the picture you've got up there with the fisherman is on Mikocheni Beach, which is sort of on the other end of the peninsula from Dar es Salaam.
Yeah.
And I'd like spend every morning out there hanging out with the fishermen, catching crabs, seeing what they got in their nets. I actually accidentally buried a friend of mine alive on that beach once, and it was the scariest moment of my life. We dug like a 10-foot deep hole because there was nothing else to do. I was homeschooled there as well, so we didn't go to school. And I dug like a 10-foot deep hole, and he was like digging a tunnel at the bottom of this 10-foot deep hole. And then a herd of cows came walking by on the beach, and they like vibrated the sand or whatever, and then poof, the whole hole fell in, and he was 10 feet deep under the sand. And I like ran to the house. My parents were out, and I was like, ah! And then I called Kamgisha, who was a gardener. I was like, Kamgisha, I think I killed my friend. And Kamgisha came over and he helped me dig him out, and luckily he survived by some miracle. Luke.
That's a crazy story. I didn't expect that as part of the answer.
Yeah.
I see somebody asked now, they asked, what's the process you guys take in the content that you produce? Is it more like of cool content or content that speaks? I think you should answer this. I think because I love your answer to this. We're speaking over each other. Speak.
No, go. You go. My answer.
I just love your opinion on this. I think like a lot of the times William and I have spoke, or like we've been hanging and stuff, I think a lot of the time it comes to this, like I'm like of especially on William's thoughts of what the truth in photography is, and if there's really like this real content instead of fake stuff. But yeah, you speak on cool versus content that speaks as to your work.
Well, I mean, first of all, I think it's up to the person who looks at the picture to decide if it's just cool or content that speaks. And with regards to Instagram as a platform, I think a lot of the time you kind of just relegated to it being cool content because you can't actually get the proper feel for the picture. But with regards to content that speaks, and like Bradley was saying, the truth in photography, one of the main things that we learned in university was that there's actually very little truth in photography, and that photography's inherent failure is actually that it's biased towards the eye of the photographer, because what you present isn't necessarily the truth, you know. And the pictures you present on Instagram, I mean, if they look cool, they can mean nothing, and if it's content that speaks, it could be speaking to something that doesn't really matter, you know. It's got to do really with the intent of the photographer, and then the way that you choose to interpret it, because there's a million ways that pictures can be interpreted, I feel.
Yeah, that's true. Like speaking for myself, is like I try as much as I can to, as you obviously it's not really like there's not much truth, but to be authentic. But I think naturally I end up just making photos. I'm like, okay, I don't mind if I'm too pleased with it. Like like will other people be pleased with it? Like naturally, like I'll set out to make work that's like, okay, I don't care about what's cool and what's trendy, but then like you slowly just wade away from that as you're making the work. That's what I find, which is one of my weaknesses, that I got to draw back to the middle and like obviously and like find a balance between that, making work for myself, but also at the end of the day, it's not me that's buying my work, it's other people.
I don't know. I feel like when it comes to making work, there's a huge gray area with regards to what the actual point of it is these days, because there's so many people who take photographs and, I don't know, are trying to develop an understanding of why it is they make it. For me personally, the reason I make photographs is because I have nothing better to do. You know, like not nothing better to do. It's nothing. There's nothing that I'd rather be doing. It's sort of the way that I come to grips with my place in the world and my understanding of what's going on around me. You know, like not to get too existential, but when you think about life too deeply, you know, there's not much of a point to it unless you find something to do. And for me, that's something I like to do, is muck around with photographs and try and show the people the way that I see things around me, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
Someone asked the question.
Yeah, I saw that as well. You can read it and answer it if you'd like.
If you could have a talk with 3 artists / photographers, dead or alive, who do you pick? That's probably a tough question. I don't know. Artists. I want to talk to Goya, I think, because he's an artist and he's mad, dark, and sort of broody with his work. And I got to see some of it at the Prada in Madrid when I went there in 2015. And he looked like a pretty pained guy, and I wanted to sort of rack his brain as to what exactly is going on in there and develop an understanding of his paintings. I think the next two will have to be photographers, because I'm a photographer. Probably,
Put you on
maybe
the spot,
Ansel
yeah.
Adams, because Ansel Adams is like, you know, classic old dude, did loads of landscapes, had a very, 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 very thorough understanding of photographs and negatives and how things live in print, and he could probably teach me a thing or two, or 10, I don't know. And the last one, I'll choose a contemporary person. My friend Kent, who's in here, actually showed me this guy's work the other day. His name's Jason Fulford, and his scans, the way he digitizes things, are absolutely nuts. So I want to have a chat with him and try and wrangle some answers out of him as to how he gets things to look the way he does, I reckon. So that's my answer. Goya, Ansel Adams, and Jason Fulford.
Yo,
champion.
Yeah, we were chatting about Jason Fulford yesterday.
Cool guy. Crazy pictures.
Which I also heard about from chatting to Kent. But I see there's another question, which I'll let you answer because I'm not being interviewed. You are. Have either of you received any bias against film photography? Any negativity?
I guess what you mean is like people who you say, oh, I shoot film, and then they're like, oh, that's stupid, why do you shoot film? For the most part, I think people who actually know how to handle film properly and what it is that you can do with it wouldn't really be too derogatory about it, besides the fact that it's quite expensive and not difficult to work with, but a mission. It's like a lot more effort than it would be to shoot digitally. People that I think actually have an inherent bias against it are the older guys. I've had a lot of like older guys be like, why are you messing around with film? Like, look at this digital camera, it's medium format, it can shoot stuff mad high resolution, you can get a fair few colors out of it, you know. So mainly the old dudes, the guys who gave up on film and are salty about people who still have an interest in it.
Yes. Yeah, that was quite a good answer. I actually was quite interested in what you said there, because I think that's the most common question people ask, like film photographers, because like I don't like that word, but like they always ask like, oh, like what's the reason you shoot film? And I also did that, and I realize it's like I used to always ask people, like be like, oh, like why do you still shoot film? What's so good about film and stuff like that? But then I realized you just get to a point where it's like whatever you shoot with is what's good. Like whatever works for you, if you know what I mean.
I mean, the reason I started using film cameras was because I did a short course at Central St. Martin's in London, and the guy, one of the instructors there, was like, "You should use a film camera. You'll develop a deeper understanding of photography," and that whole shebang. And I started using them there, and sort of, I don't know, got into the whole process, and just kept going. And then it became a big thing. So it's cool that people are into it. I don't like the idea that people look at your work and think, "Oh wow, film photography, cool. I like this because it was taken on film." I use film cameras because there's a look to it that you cannot achieve digitally. I don't care what people say. There's certain elements of using film cameras, especially when it comes to medium or large format, that you cannot replicate digitally. And if you could, I would go buy a digital camera because it would be a lot less effort than the shebang I have to go through to get pictures out of a camera. But yeah, for now, it's just because there's a look to it you can't emulate.
No matter how many apps and Fujifilm and weird apps like that you have. No offense to anybody who uses that. I'm not bashing anyone. I see there's another question of somebody asking, what are the biggest challenges for you regarding film photography? I think you've answered part of that, but...
I mean, the main thing, two main things really, are how much it costs, because it costs you money every time you want to take a picture. And I don't know, the logistics of it, because you have to hand film in and get it back and scan it, and all of that kind of adds up in terms of time and the amount of time you invest. You need to be sure that the pictures you're taking are actually worth the amount of time you're investing in just getting them developed. If you're taking pictures that are a waste of time, you'd be better off spending more time developing the pictures, like developing your process in taking the pictures and your understanding of photography, than handing film in and hoping you get something cool back because it's shot on film.
Okay.
I see a bunch more people have joined, so we should probably just reiterate that if you have questions or would like to ask something, you can ask in the chat, and we would love to answer it, because I don't know. I feel like we're running out of things to say.
I have pinned a comment saying you can contribute to add questions if you like. So cool. That's at the bottom of the thing the whole time. So hopefully people read that, and don't be shy to ask questions. I think I'd prefer your questions than mine, because I already know a lot about, well, you guys don't. So it's you guys that are watching, and that, or I would like to gain from this. I just thought I'd facilitate a platform of creative talks to be able to. Oh my word! Maya just asked what happened with the Daisy 100. That's the topic you love.
The Daisy 100 thing was when I got involved in it, because it ended up not being a thing.
Or first explain what Daisy is, because some people might not know what Daisy is.
I'm getting there. It's an app that Matthew Williams started with Dom Santry. That's meant to be catered towards connecting creatives and getting people jobs and that sort of thing. And I submitted like a portfolio or project or whatever, and became part of what was originally going to be the 100 people they used to advertise the app. But they did an initial launch of the app, and I don't know, it probably didn't go the way they wanted it to. It didn't gain enough traction, and they decided to completely scrap the Daisy 100 idea. I reckon that is my guesstimate as to what happened, because I was never told anything about it. I just stopped getting emails and all that sort of thing, and noticed that they relaunched it with a different branding, focused in a different direction. I'm not going to speak about the direction they went in, because I don't know. I don't think
bashing
on
people.
No negativity.
Yeah.
Matthew Eden, how's it, Matthew?
And then I see somebody else asked, what's your process towards portraiture? And then there's another question after that we'll get to.
My process towards portraiture, I don't know. I look at the background a lot of the time when I'm taking a portrait. I mean, I know I take portraits where there's not much going on in the background, but the most you can hope for with a portrait is to provide a representation of the person that you're photographing, that you think they'd be happy with, or at least that you think in your eye brings forth the elements of them that you understand. You can't, like I was saying earlier, you can't actually represent who that person is through a photograph. It's a very fallible strategy, but you can take a picture that in your eye represents who they are as a person. I guess my process itself is just to set the camera up, see that the angles are nice, make sure the eyes are in focus, and go from there.
Okay, and then the next question is, do you have a method or standard when you take photos? I think that was kind of the question you answered before in a way.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, method or standard is just have my camera, make sure I've metered the light properly, and I don't know, see what I see. I don't like to get too deep. I mean, when I've got my camera out and I'm trying to take a picture of something, sometimes I'll just instantly take the picture because it's there, but then a lot of the time I'll like wait around for it to start existing. And with people specifically, I'm very picky with my poses and things like that. I like to make sure that the person looks, I don't know, like they'll look good in a photograph. I don't want the photograph to focus so heavily on representing them that it loses its quality as a picture.
I think I see Kent has another question. You can read it out if you'd like and then answer.
What is your game plan as a young photographer after COVID-19, especially in a South African context and in the commercial sphere? I'm not really. My game plan is probably just going to be to continue making work. I mean, for the last year, I've really just been focused mainly not on making work, but on developing my process so that when I do make work, it has the quality that I'd like it to have. With regards to a game plan, I send a lot of emails and hope that some people reply. I don't know. I hope that's a good enough answer in the commercial sphere. Probably assist people, you know. Maybe scan some things if people want to pay me to scan. I don't know. That's my main game plan.
Oh, hey, Talu. I see somebody said hey. But anyway, and then the next question is, how often do you take photos? Which I think I know the answer to as well.
I take photos fairly often. It depends on if I feel like there's something that I need to photograph, you know, like I get like an itch and then I need to go take a picture of something, but if I can't find a photo that's worth taking, I won't take the picture. Excuse the crap. Yeah, so as often as I can be bothered, but very often really. Like at the moment, it's as often as I can be bothered. In general, pretty much daily if there's something worth going out and having a look at. Hello, Mark. Mark actually is from Tanzania, where I grew up, where my friend nearly got buried alive in a hole on the beach. So hi to Mark.
Oh, crazy. I see Matthew asked the question.
What are your thoughts on the constant battle photographers deal with about capturing someone in their space without encroaching too much? Where is the fine line, or where is the line? I suppose the line really is just how much you feel you can put into that picture without making it cheesy, you know, like without turning it into less of a picture about the person and more about their surroundings. Like with regards to and I'm going to speak to this with regards to the burqa project I did, which we spoke about earlier. I didn't want it to be all about like the crazy, colorful buildings and stuff. Like a lot of the pictures have the buildings and that shebang in it, but it's more about the way that people interacted with their surroundings. And I feel like so long as you don't go out of your way to make it like too obvious what it is you're trying to get at, then it won't really cross the line. And without shoving your camera in people's face without their permission, you know, I don't know. Then again, that is something you can also do technically. There's a lot of things you can talk about with regards to the what's the word? Ethicality of photographs, and I don't think I could really speak to it properly. Ask Terry Richardson, someone said to Matthew. Yeah, young Terry took it a bit too far, probably. Actually, definitely. Terry's I don't want to talk about Terry.
On that, like, I remember chatting to you about your burqa project, and you were saying you almost anyway were invisible as to that because you just looked like another tourist. It wasn't like you were taking photos of the tourist. You just looked like, oh, you have another camera, or one of the many people in burqa.
Yeah, I mean, that's also what interested me, I suppose, is that street photography, which is not something I really focus on a lot, is quite hard to do. But if you go hang out with a bunch of tourists and they've all got cameras, they won't blink twice if you take a picture of them because they figure they're just in the way of your picture, which was my strategy for photographing them, actually, because they're so completely indifferent to what you're taking a picture of. They'll just wander into your frame, and I wanted them to wander into my frame, and I took advantage of their indifference, I suppose. Someone asks, how did you get the burqa pictures to have people wearing clothes that match? I didn't. I just took the pictures, and if the clothes match, it's luck.
I also noticed with some of them, there's like a green shirt on a green background and stuff. And I was like, oh wow! But obviously, you can't. It wasn't directed.
I think I know the one you're talking about, and I don't like color on color in photographs the most.
That's what I thought.
This whole wall right here, right now, I redid it recently. Is my study on color. I do the wall, redo the wall quite often, and as you can see, it starts out with color on color, and then advances and develops beyond that. Because, I mean, it's quite a tricky thing to do properly, but also it's I don't know, things blend into each other. That picture I took because of the woman who's got cornrows and is wearing the sort of shui style dress. I found it very ironic that she was busy touristing it up in a neighborhood she had no regard for while wearing, because she was a French lady as well, clothes that aren't necessarily inherently associated with her culture,
Yes.
as it were.
That is rather
So
interesting.
that's why I took that picture. The green shirt just happened to be, and he's wearing a safari hat as well. I like that. I like the safari. Tourists wearing safari outfits.
I think I'll ask one more question that might lead into other questions, and then see if there's any more questions from the viewers or people viewing, and then we'll see if that is the gradual end, or if there's more questions, we'll carry on. But this is the last question from me. Otherwise, I'll try to keep conversation going. But these are the questions that I thought would be good, and this is the last one, or which should have maybe been first, but it's now last. About where you started with photography. I know you started as a graffiti artist, and then things developed from there. I'm not sure if you want to speak about that, how that happened, because I find it quite an interesting story.
You want to get really deep? I'll get to the graffiti thing momentarily, but the first camera I got was from my dad. He used to travel, or yeah, he still does, but he traveled a lot, and he'd always bring us back little gifts because he'd be gone for like weeks or months at a time. And when I was like 11 years old, he brought back this weird little Sony camera that was a stick and had a 2-megapixel camera, and I photographed a bean plant that I'd been growing for a homeschooling project. And I don't know. I always, looking back at it now, I think it was interesting that the first thing I chose to photograph was something that would inherently grow to be something else, and sort of just, freeze that moment in time, which is, I guess, the failure and the magic of photography. But with regards to how I got started in doing it the way I'm doing it now, I wrote a lot of graffiti when I was younger. Like, I was always super into art, like art class and all that thing. It was the thing I did that, I don't know, people like Will paints and Will draws and all that. And I got really into Tumblr, and on Tumblr there's a lot of graffiti stuff where people like go out and video themselves spray painting trains and take pictures, and everything looks very cool. And I started taking pictures, like photographing graffiti, and my friends writing graffiti and all that sort of thing. And then it went on from there. I went, and when I did the short course in photography, I also did a short course in fashion design at Central St. Martin's, because I wasn't sure if I wanted to go study fashion or go study photography. And as it turned out, I had I don't know, my fashion instructor said good things, and my photography instructor said good things, and my fashion instructor did not hold much hope. So I went for photography route. So
you could have been a fashion designer instead of holding an RB.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I still will be, Who knows? We'll see how the world goes. No, I'm into photography.
Or the two can meet with fashion photography.
Yeah, I'll photograph my own clothes. No, I think the thing is, when you combine a whole bunch of things and want to get into a lot of things at the same time, that what's the saying? Jack of all trades, master of none. I'm quite wary of that thing, and for me, I don't really think I'm going to get somewhere where I want to be photographically if I'm not focusing not focusing entirely on photographs and my understanding of photographs and the way that they can be perceived, and then all the stuff that goes along with that. I wouldn't want to get too into something else. Personally, I don't know. There's people who can do it. I'm not one of those people. I'm a photographer.
Yeah, well, from knowing you in the short or long bit, I'm not sure if it's short or long, but that I've known you, like, you literally breathe and eat, sleep photography, which is cool. Like, I can see it's more than just I take photos to #film. You take it with you. It's generally a passion of yours, which is cool to see. I'm not sure, or I assume you're writing down that suggestion by Matthew there.
Yes, I will have a look at it. I will suggest a documentary as well. I don't know how easy it'll be to get a hold of, but it's Alex Soth one called Somewhere to Disappear, and I think
I've
that
watched
whole,
that. It's good.
it's very good. It's a very interesting insight into a photographer's process and the way in which, you know, people who make really good photographs of people interact with their subjects. And also, he goes into, I don't know, I wouldn't say he's trying to explain the way that he makes his photographs, but also the documentary itself, Somewhere to Disappear, on Alex Soth, goes into a lot of detail with regards to how his work comes to be. You know, I think it's worth watching if you're into making sort of long-term documentary or just investigative style projects.
Sweet. So is there any last things you want to say? Otherwise, I'm going to open it up to the viewers for I'll give it a minute. If there's no questions, I think we'll end it here. So a shout out to everybody who's watching to give your last questions. Otherwise, this is the end unless Will has something to say.
Thank you, everybody that came by. I'm glad to have had someone listen to me and Bradley talk about things in general. And yeah, if you have any questions that are burning a hole in your soul, ask them now and we can answer them.
Yeah, thank you. There were a lot more people than I thought that would be on the live. I thought it was going to be 5 people watching, but it's been a constant 20 or so, which has been quite good, more than I expected. But I assume nobody has any more questions because I haven't seen any. So that is goodbye, everyone. Thank you all for participating. I hope this is everything that you expected it to be.
I hope it was everything everyone else expected it to be.
Yeah, sweet.
Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers, everyone.
Bye.